Hi, Gary Francione from Rutgers University and for the Abolitionist Approach.
Gary Steiner from Bucknell University. And I wanted to talk with you and Gary today about something I encountered very recently called Reducetarianism. It's something I hadn't heard of before, and it strikes me as very, very strange. It's the idea of, instead of out and out prohibiting the uses of animals, just reducing the amount of animal use that we engage in. And it strikes me as strange because it seems a lot like saying that instead of prohibiting something like rape or sexual abuse, we should just engage in less of it or do it more gently or something like that, which I think to the reasonable person seems wildly counterintuitive. And I'm wondering, why is it that it doesn't seem wildly and counterintuitive to say that reducetarianism, to talk about reducetarianism? And then Gary tells me it's turning out to be a very, very big part of the so-called animal rights movement. It doesn't make sense to me, except on the level that there are people who don't want to be told that they shouldn't eat animals or use animals, and that somehow it plays to a certain desire that people have to continue to engage in practices that they just shouldn't engage in.
Yeah, I mean, the reducitarianism is the latest manifestation of this idea that when it comes to the fundamental rights of non human animals, we treat violations of those fundamental rights very differently from the way that we do where humans are involved. So, where humans are involved, we would never say, looking at any of their fundamental rights and the violations of those rights, we would never say, well, racism is, I mean, equality is involves fundamental rights, and racism is bad, but it's pervasive. It goes on all over the place. It's not going to end overnight, and so we ought to take baby steps, and we ought to promote various forms of racism that are judged to be less harmful than other forms of racism or something like that. Or let's have racist joke free Monday or something like that. We would never do that because we would never want to be in a position of promoting human rights violations, even supposedly lesser ones or reduced ones. We would never want to be in a position of promoting those things as morally good, but that's exactly what we're doing with animals.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the more I think about it, the more I think that the idea of reducitarianism plays into the promotion of all kinds of economic imperatives and economic interests. It's a multi billion-dollar business, and when you have all sorts of sort of major organizations that people tend to think of as being aligned with animal rights, promoting things like reducitarianism or promoting happy meat or whatever it might be, it strikes me as very much contrary to what morality requires.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what's happening here is the animal movement is promoting animal exploitation. And there are lots of reasons for this, but the primary reason is that it's lucrative for these groups to go to the public and say you don't really have to change your behavior if you care about animals. Just eat a little less meat, or have ice cream once less a week, or something like that. And I mean, the bottom line, if you want the explanation, the bottom line can be summed up very well. This is what it's all about. It's about organizations. When you think about it for a second, what do you need an organization? If somebody wants to promote the idea that people ought to reduce their meat intake, which again is not really a new idea, but if somebody wants to promote that idea, why do they have to have an organization and declare it a movement and stick a donate button on it? But this is what the modern animal movement has become: a group of people who are promoting animal exploitation.
Right, right. And the one other thing I'd add to this, the thing that troubles me perhaps the most, is it's very hard to go to other people with the idea that they've got to stop doing something that they're very accustomed to doing and may actually on some level enjoy doing. And I think that's the place where a person, if you really have a certain conviction about the interests and rights of non-human animals, and they can't do this for themselves, we have to do it on their behalf, one has to have the courage of their convictions and simply say, look, I can't participate in this. I'm sorry, I can't tell you what you want to hear. This is the real truth about the matter. On some level, this message finally has to be given.
Yeah, and I think we've got to be clear about it. I mean, this is something I say all the time. If we embrace the idea that animals have moral value, if we reject the idea that they're things, we have to be clear that veganism is a moral imperative. We have to be very clear in that message. If people who hear that message care, but they're not willing to go vegan, or they're not willing to go vegan immediately, then they can make whatever choices they want to make, to take whatever baby steps they care to take, or whatever incremental measures they want to take. But we should never be, ever, 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 be in a position of promoting animal exploitation, any form of animal exploitation, and saying that's a good thing. You ought to be doing that. You're a meat eater, but if you eat meat once less a week, that's a really good thing. That's what you ought to do. That's how you ought to satisfy your moral obligations to animals. I also note, ironically, that the guy who's talking about reducetarianism, I guess he's been talking about this for a few years, and he oftentimes says that this can help lead people to veganism. As I understand it, he's not a vegan yet, so it hasn't worked for him. In any event, veganism is very, very, very easy. So please, if you're not vegan, go vegan. If you are vegan, stay vegan, and educate everybody you can about veganism. We have a website where you can get all sorts of information, and there is no donate button, howdoigovegan.com. And please, if you have the resources, adopt or foster a non-human animal of any species. There are zillions out there, and they need us.
Always a rescue animal.
Always. Thank you very much for
Thank
listening.
you.